Good morning, adventurers. My name is Ben, and welcome to a morning show where I sit around, drink some tea, and talk about D&D. Mm. Oh, yeah. So, first up this week on D&D news, we don't really have any D&D news that I caught over the weekend. It's not super surprising to me because we've got Fizzbands coming out in just over a week now. Next week, to Tuesday, is when we are getting it. And so I'm not super shocked that we're not getting a lot of news right now for a bunch of other stuff. I imagine, though, that we might be getting a little bit more teaser stuff as we move through the week here, which is super cool. Or it will be super cool if it does happen. But I can't imagine that we're going to be getting a whole lot of outside information because they're going to be trying to shift focus to that thing. I'm actually a little bit surprised that they even announced that Critical Role book from last week this close to that. Other than that, that's all we've got for news, unless I missed something. Moving forward into streams today at 4:30 on the Wizards Twitch channel, we've got Roll20 Candlekeep Mysteries, 4:30 Eastern Time, and then at 7 Eastern Time, we've got Into the Mist. So that is twitch.tv/DND. They've got programming from 4:30 on to pretty much 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So that's 1:30 to 7. 1:30 to 7. There we go. Math is hard sometimes. And by sometimes, I mean all the time. But that's not really the point, is it? Yeah, that's all I've got for streams. Other than we've got the campaign 3 of Critical Role opening this week on Thursday, so mark your calendars if that's something you're excited about. But moving forward into TND, today I've got my sweater mug again because it is starting to get chillier outside, and I figured it was probably the right general message to send. I think yesterday when I woke up, it was about 40, 45 Fahrenheit, so it's definitely dipping down there, but that's all right. I like the cold. Anyway, I've got a really nice, just regular gunpowder green in here. I'm a little bit tired today, and if you can tell, I'm a little bit congested too with the whole season changing. And again, my joints still kind of hurt because I've been working a lot and moving around a lot. So this will hopefully help me out with that. All right. Anyway, getting into it today, what we are talking about. We are talking about Druids. Again, I'm going through one of the core classes every single Monday until the end of the year. It works out pretty much perfectly. I think I might be off by like a week or something, but it's pretty much exactly right for me to lay out the trajectory that I want this first season of this show to go. So today we are on Druid Day, which is actually super, super convenient and super, super like timely because we actually got to play a preliminary game for that stream game that Brooke and I are setting up together. Well, Brooke is setting up. I'm in it. I'm going along with 4 other people, and it's actually the character that I got to build on this show with you guys. So it was really, really fun to be able to get into that, play it. I'm a big fan of sort of how it feels, and I'm excited to get to actually, play it and put it out in the world for you guys. So stay tuned. I'll have, news on that as it comes up. But all of that is to say, we're talking about Druids today. So Druids, for anybody that doesn't super know, Druids are kind of... I have written down in my notes here that they're the warriors of nature, which is not necessarily true because they're not usually warriors. They're more like the stewards of nature, if you will. They're oftentimes viewed as like a more neutral kind of entity. They tend towards neutral or good. That's not to say that they can't be evil, but they generally don't spend a lot of time in cities. They definitely, unless they are like their own druidic sort of settlements, because standard civilization cities, quote unquote civilization cities, in the Eurocentric way that we think about D&D, are ones that don't really embrace nature quite so much as they would potentially. There we go. So they are the stewards of nature, we'll say, instead of warriors of nature, because that's a little bit more ranger vibe. They don't get a whole lot of actual class features. Uh, there is they and the wizard are the ones that really kind of like spread out. Like even when we talked about cleric, I was saying a lot of the same thing, but I was at least saying it over and over again. Um, there's only 6 different individual class features that they pick up in the through their leveling up. Wow, I am struggling today. Apparently, through leveling up, there's only 6 different points that I've written down where they actually gain something. I didn't write down when they get Druid Circle features, but I haven't really done that for any of them so far. So let's go through those 6 really quick because it won't take very long. This video might end up being a little bit shorter. But let's just roll through it and see where we end up. First up, at first level, you get Druidic and Spellcasting. Spellcasting is pretty self-explanatory. You are a wisdom-based caster, so all of your stuff is connected to your wisdom. And Druids, because they're a primary caster, technically actually use wisdom for pretty much everything. So wisdom is definitely going to be your core stat for that. Druidic is the secret language of the Druids. People can like make Arcana checks or something. What is it? They can make some kind of check to perception checks to perceive that the language is even there, but it is impossible to decipher without magic if you don't know it, which is actually super cool. Because I want to say, I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that even like thieves can't. You can decipher eventually given enough time. So it's really cool that there is a language that is impossible to decipher without magic if you don't know it. Maybe I just think that's cool, but I think I'm a fan of it. Moving forward into level 2. This is where you pick up like your bread and butter essentially for the entire rest of the game. You get your Druid Circle, which is your subclass, and you get your Wild Shape. Wild Shape is there's a whole lot that goes into Wild Shape, right? There is so much that happens with it. You can use an action on your turn to expend one of your uses of Wild Shape. You get 2 uses of Wild Shape per long rest, or per short or long rest. And you can transform into a beast with specifically a beast, that's important, with a CR of 1/4 or lower that doesn't have a flying speed or a swimming speed. You stay in this form for a number of hours equal to half your Druid level, rounded down, so when you pick it up at level 2, it's 1 hour. Or until you revert to 0, or until you hit 0 hit points. It's sort of like Polymorph, if you know anything about that. If you don't, you take on the pretty much all of the physical in-game statistics of a different creature, specifically in this case a beast. I'm pretty sure Polymorph is also just a beast. But the difference between that and Wild Shape is that in Wild Shape, you retain all of your mental stats. So your intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, you hang on to, I believe. You also retain all of your skill and saving throw proficiencies in addition to gaining those that the creature has. If the creature's proficiency bonus is higher than yours, you use their proficiency bonus instead. You can't cast spells or speak while you're in beast shape, but because you retain all of your mental stats, you can continue to use your concentration spells and maintain concentration on things while in beast form. So if you've got something up like a lightning bolt, not a lightning bolt, you got something up like a call lightning, there we go, then you can use the call lightning on each subsequent turn, in spite of the fact that you are not able to actively cast a new spell in doing that. This is also another big one, and it's one of the ones where you really kind of have to work with your DM. You retain all of the abilities of your race, class, and etc. in your new form, so long as you can use them. This is the part where you kind of like have to like work with your DM to figure out what exactly that line is, because technically you can use a lot of stuff as in an animal shape, but sometimes it's connected more towards like the anatomy of your creature or of your race specifically. One of the ones that I'm thinking of most obviously is Tabaxis Feline Agility, where you can double your speed for a round, because like you're not a cat anymore, but there's nothing that would make it so that you can't necessarily use it again or use it in this shape. So it's one of those things where it's like, So it's going to be a judgment call in the moment for your DM. That is a general rundown of Wild Shape. It is complicated. It continues to be complicated, and it won't stop being complicated. If you're going to be a druid, you just kind of have to make yourself super familiar with that. Also, with Wild Shape, you have to transform into beasts that you have seen before. So you have to sit down with your DM and essentially make a list of all of the beasts that you have seen that you can stat block for, and then from there you can like extrapolate a little bit. A lot of times, like, if you're close enough, it's probably gonna be fine. Moving on from level 2. Yeah, that was just level 2. At level 4, you get a Wild Shape improvement. Now you can pick things with a swimming speed up to CR 1/2, I believe. Now that I am saying that, I'm not positive. Yes, CR 1/2 with a swimming speed. So you can be like crocodiles or octopus or something like that. Moving forward at level 8, you get another Wild Shape improvement where you can transform into things up to CR1. Wow, my brain is not working fast enough today. Up to CR1, and you can have a flying speed. So you can be things like a giant eagle now, which is fantastic. Flying speed is always going to be a very good thing in Dungeons & Dragons. And through all of this, again, you can stay in that form a number of hours, equal to half your druid level rounded down. So by the time you hit level 8, you can be an eagle for 4 hours, which is pretty cool. Jumping forward, from there, we go to level 18. That's a 10 level jump, which is kind of crazy. You pick up Timeless Body and Beast Spells. Timeless Body Timeless Body makes it so that for every 10 years that pass, you only age 1 year. So that's more of like a roleplay benefit, I guess. It's kind of hard because it's not really roleplay, but like, if you reach that high of a level as a druid, you are for sure going to outlive all of your friends. And that's just kind of how it goes. Particularly if you are like an elven druid or something like that, which oftentimes is what feels like a pretty easy pairing just because of all of the fantasy tropes that have ever existed. Beast Spells allows you to ignore the verbal and somatic components of spells while in Wild Shape. And by ignore, I mean you can perform them while you are in Wild Shape. You cannot present material components using this sort of thing, but if you have a spellcasting focus, like a druidic focus, you can just have that be like a collar or something when you turn into an animal or use your Wild Shape. So that you have that, and you would, at least in theory, then be able to continue to use the spells that require material components so long as they are not consumed or have a gold piece value. Moving forward to 20th level, we have Archdruid, which gives you an unlimited number of Wild Shapes. So you jump from year 2 to infinity at 20th level. And you, in using your Druid spells, can ignore verbal and somatic components and ignore material components that don't have a cost or are consumed by the spell, which means that you're essentially constantly subtle casting, if you know anything about sorcerers, and you don't have to present components for really anything. You can just kind of like wield nature magic at your whim, which is super cool. Now you do pick up Druid Circle, so subclass features, at levels 2, 6, 10, and 14. But I didn't talk about those because they're just kind of in there. But that is the end of the Druid like class acquire. No, it's the end of the stuff you get for just being a Druid. So we're gonna go through all of the We're gonna go through all the subclasses now. Just talk on them real quick. Talk about what they kind of like fit, because this one does go back to sort of the like tropey vibe a little bit more, which I think is actually probably good for a class that is so, it's not rooted in a trope, it is just so wide. I say it's not rooted in a trope, it's not rooted in a very specific adventurer's archetype of like utility, damage, healing, that sort of thing. It is rooted in a theme, which is just nature. So they do play into these utility, healing, that sort of thing, as you go through here. So we're starting off, there are only 7 of these. So I'm actually kind of hoping we get more of them coming up soon, because I like Druids, and I really, really am a fan of the last one that they released, and I'll talk about the last couple they released, and I'll talk about them in a sec. But we are starting off with the Circle of Dreams Druid. In my mind, this is one of the more utility-based Druid subclasses. You don't get a whole lot for actual combat, but they do sort of run the gamut of utility-based things you can do. They have healing, they have buffs, they have travel. Like they really are kind of like filling all those different niches. They don't particularly excel at any one of those things, but that doesn't mean that they are not also good at them, because Druid is a phenomenal class as a whole. Moving forward, we have the Circle of Spores Druid, which I really, really love. This is one of the ones that I was just talking about. This is, in my mind, one of the most control-heavy Druid circles, because you have this cloud of spores around you. It's called Halo of Spores. But it allows you to like affect the battlefield immediately around you in a lot of cool different ways. And so they are really, really awesome. And I believe, unless I am mistaken, so I'm going to continue to just kind of ramble here for a second. I believe it takes a use of your wild shape to like send out your spores, but I believe you can continue to keep those spores up while you are in beast form if you really want to. So you would be able to like oh no, you can't. Never mind. I'm wrong. But so ignore what I just said, but that doesn't make it not super cool. Plus, if you have this like essentially buffer around you, you can cast spells within it pretty well, in theory at least. Moving forward from the thing that I was just mistaken about, actively in the middle of the video, we have the Circle of Stars Druid, which it might honestly be one of my favorite ones. It might be my favorite one. It's definitely one of my favorite ones. Mostly because it is so versatile. It's so cool. It's so versatile, and it leans into a theme that I think is really cool, that I'm really glad they decided to actually explore with a subclass, in that it is about constellation stars, that sort of thing. You can use the core of this class is that you can use a wild shape. You can expend a use of your wild shape. There we go. And have like constellations appear on your body. And when you do, you pick one of the constellations you want to appear that they list out, and it gives you a benefit. It's either it is either a utility benefit where like it helps you in a roleplay setting, gives you a damaging benefit in that it gives you like it allows you to do damage, or it gives you a healing benefit, which is really cool too. That's why I picked it for this campaign that I'm playing in with Brooke that's going to be streamed, because we needed somebody that could kind of heal a little bit, and I didn't want to necessarily just be a cleric. Not that I have anything against clerics. I really, really love clerics, but I wanted to try a little bit of something else, expand a little bit. And I knew we weren't going to be getting up into the higher levels, so I wasn't super concerned about like finding a class that I could get Revivify with immediately, which is why I went with this one instead. Then we go to your Circle of Land Druid. This is, I don't know a better way to say this because it's going to sound bad, but this is your vanilla Druid, and there's nothing wrong with that. It is your Druid that is very focused on like forests and mountains and rivers and that sort of thing, and there's no problem with that. It's actually a pretty solid subclass. You get, depending on the environment that you pick, you get some really pretty good circle spells, like an expanded spell list for that circle, in addition to like connecting yourself to all of this nature, giving you things like the ability to travel without being slowed down. You can't be charmed or frightened by elementals or fae, immune to poison and disease. Like it's not a bad subclass. It's just your sort of run-of-the-mill vanilla druid. So if you are looking for a naturey druid, this is honestly probably your best bet, because it is a naturey druid. Moving on from the Circle of the Land, you have the Circle of the Moon, which most people will tell you is the best one. That is because it is the combat forward circle in the druid class. It allows you to use your wild shape as a bonus action instead of an action, and you get combat wild shape, which allows you to bump that CR that you can turn into up to a 1 instantly as soon as you get wild shape, because you pick up wild shape at the same time as you pick up your druid circle. And then You still can't do like flying and swimming at that point until you get up to those levels, but eventually you can. And by the time you hit 6th level, you can turn into a beast with the challenge rating as high as your druid level divided by 3. So that means ultimately you can go up to CR6 beasts. But you probably won't unless you have a very specific reason to, because starting at 10th level, you can use both of your wild shape uses to turn into an elemental of some sort, either air, earth, water, fire, which are fantastic creatures. Like they're beefy, and each of them have really good utility benefits depending on which one you pick. Moving on from there, you have your Circle of the Shepherd Druid, which is your conjurer. And honestly, it gives you it gives you the ability to like buff your allies in addition to being like a conjurer. It is one of the more conjure heavy, conjure forward subclasses, maybe even more so than the Conjuration Wizard. I haven't done a direct comparison of them, but like it exists to let you summon things into the world, which is honestly cool. Summoning spells are kind of a DM's nightmare sometimes, but it is very cool to have that sort of subclass laid out in front of you. And finally, we come to the Circle of Wildfire. This is the most healer-ish one, and I throw the ish on there because they do have some circle spells that give you healing spells. You pick up Cure Wounds, Revivify, Aura of Life, and Mass Cure Wounds automatically as part of your circle spells. And you have a couple of features that are focused on healing or keeping you alive or something like that. But really, your core feature here is split between healing and using a use of your wild shape to get yourself a little fire buddy. If you watched Exandria Unlimited, Fern is, I'm pretty sure, a Wildfire Spirit Druid. Or Circle of Wildfire Druid. Wildfire Spirit is what you conjure. But they are really cool, really kind of fun. They're interesting. It's one of those that you really just kind of have to go read. I do like it a lot. I think it requires sort of a very specific campaign, but I think it's really cool. But that is everything I have for you guys today. That's all about Druids. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I super appreciate it. And thank you, of course, to my patrons, especially you guys are the ones that really make this show possible. If you're able to and want to support the show, there's a link to my Patreon in the description of this video. I would super appreciate it. But other than that, thank you guys so much for following along, and continuing to make this part of your everyday routine, because it makes it so that I am able to and want to keep doing this. So thank you. But with all that said, I will see you guys tomorrow, and until next time, keep on rolling.